I'm David Gordon, and this is What the Tech. What we wanted to talk about in this video was just why we have a Mr. Voice, what Mr. Voice does, and why that's important. To talk about why it's important specifically to comedy sports, brought in Alex Grindeland.
Hello. So Mr. Voice is the fourth player in a comedy sports scene. You know, 3 improvisers on stage, and then their sort of net, their helper, that fourth player is Mr. Voice. Mr. Voice really is the thing that takes us from being an amateur improv show to this professional, awesome sporting event.
We had the in-stadium announcer for the Seahawks come and see a show, and came up to me afterwards and just was talking about how much it adds to a sporting event in general, but also how much it had added to the comedy sports experience to have that pump-up voice, that pump-up music, really making it like a real sporting event and making it exciting. One of the things I love about CSC Seattle is and just comedy sports in general, as far as I can tell, is the amount of respect that they have for their technical improvisers.
I remember the first time when I, as a comedy sports player, realized that Mr. Voice was there with me. And I remember I was just in a scene, and there was like a character who things were getting kind of sexy, and I said, oh, let me just dim the lights. And I just reached out into the air and did this, and the actual real lights dimmed. And it was such a simple thing, but it blew the audience's mind, and it blew my mind. And then I started just playing with the dimmer, and I was like, Mr. Voice is there, he's with me, he's playing with me. Woo!
Yeah, this being a technician and the mindset of that is kind of counter to our improv instincts and what we want as an improviser. You know, in improv we want to be really just like open-minded and just like let whatever happens happen, and as a tech we want to be really reliable and always deliver exactly the same thing. And especially for comedy sports where the format has so many requirements of us, it's easy to get into that mindset of gotta do the next thing. Well, you do have to do those things, but you've also, as an improviser, you've got that sense of, I can do the cool thing too. I can replace everything on the scoreboard with pictures of Matt Damon because we had a Matt Damon joke half an hour ago. It's the balance between those two things, working to be reliable and prepared for what you need to do in the show. You're ready to serve the show and add to the show, just like any other player, and in a way that the other players can't do. So now we just want to talk about, just real briefly, the basic underpinnings of sound and audio tech. Light tech is important too, but we have 2 lights at the theater, so we figured you can probably figure enough out to be Mr. Voice at CSC Seattle without too much help. So first, we're just going to do a real brief overview of signal flow. This is how sound gets from the source of the sound, which for us is almost always either a microphone or our computer, and how it gets out to the speakers. So we start out with our source, either our microphone going down the cord, computer, we just plug into the headphone jack. Either way, they go on their way to our mixing board. Now this is just one channel of the mixing board that I've drawn on here. At the top of the mixing board of every channel, you have the gain. Now the gain is basically how much of the sound from the microphone you're allowing to come into the board. Think about if it's a water pipe, you're opening up more and more space for water to flow in. If the gain is turned all the way down, you're just not going to get any sound. The gain isn't the only way you have of controlling the volume. You also have your fader down at the bottom, but the gain gives you your initial volume. So when you're setting up a channel, you basically want the gain to be at the right volume when your volume slider is turned to 0. So a really loud signal, you'll turn the gain down to get that effect. For a really quiet signal, you'll have to turn the gain up for that. Basically, the sound goes down the channel in order. So first the gain happens to it to get our initial level set. The next channels on the board, which you don't really have to worry about at comedy sports, are auxiliary sends or aux sends. Those can send out to, if you have monitor speakers or if you have a speaker in the lobby or something, you can control the volume of this channel going to that speaker separately. We don't do that, so you don't really need to worry about it. There's also a couple of EQ or equalizer knobs on the board. The EQ controls how loud the treble, the high side of the sound is versus the bass or the low sound. There's also on our soundboard a mid-range knob and another knob that controls what part of the range between bass and treble that mid-range knob controls. So this is the EQ on the board. It's fairly straightforward. You really have just a couple of options. You have your high frequency up here at the top, makes sense. Your low frequency down here at the bottom, makes sense. And then in the middle, you have two knobs that control the mid frequency. At the bottom, you've got your volume slider, which this is your basic, just like how loud is it as it goes out of the mixer and goes to get amplified. Like I said, you should generally control your gain so that your volume knob, when it's at the 0 position, is about as loud as you want it. For comedy sports, I usually try and make that the volume that I want my drop music between scenes. So then when I'm doing in-scene music that needs to be a little quieter, more of an underscore, I can put the volume down here, but I know when I bring it up to 0, that's going to be as loud as I want it to be. You got to bear in mind that for the computer, a YouTube video is probably going to be a different volume than something playing out of the Mr. Voice software. So bear that in mind. I try and take my Mr. Voice software volume down to a place where it's the same volume as YouTube videos, but YouTube videos and honestly even the music on our computer is a little hit and miss in terms of being the same volume. So you just got to work with it. Because we're improvising, haha. Now this is the solo button. You can tell it's on because this little light right here will stay solid green. The rest of the time this light will blink if your signal is strong enough as it gets stronger, so you can see like as someone talks, as it gets louder it'll blink. The red light means that it's too loud, you need to turn down your gain. But what the solo light does is two things. And we need to go over there on the board to see what they are. You can see when the solo light is on for a channel, and it could be on for multiple channels at once, this will blink, and this right here will show you a more detailed version of what the little blinking light did. It'll show you how loud you're getting, if you're getting up to the red or the yellow. Again, turn down your gain. Your goal should be for the average volume of a given channel to hit right around 0. The other thing that this does is it sends the sound from just that channel to your headphones. Normally the headphones will be getting exactly what the speakers are getting. When solo is on, the headphones will give you just what the solo channel is showing. This is how we can line up songs before they are being played for the audience. We can hear what music we're going to get, we can line it up to the right spot in the music. That's all using the headphones and soloing. The headphone volume is controlled with a combination of these knobs. Most of the time you can get away with just using the one labeled control room/phones. Sometimes you'll have a problem where you need to turn up the solo volume in order for that to work properly, but as long as no one's messed with it, this control room phones knob should be all you need. The mixer, as you probably know, also has a master volume. Again, sometimes if you start playing music and you're like, why is no sound coming out? It's because your master volume is down. Again, the master volume ideally should be in a place where when everything is at the normal volume you expect it to be, master volume should be at 0. There is also, and this is a really important troubleshooting point, next to each volume fader, there are little buttons that say 1-2, 3-4, and L-R. Now those buttons are telling the channel where to send its output. If L-R is not pressed in, it means that it won't be getting sent to the master volume and you're not going to be getting any sound. A lot of times if sound is cut out in the middle of a match, that's the first thing to try, because it's really easy when you're sliding the fader up and down to accidentally click that button and then suddenly you've got no sound. There's a lot of other things that could go wrong, but that's an easy one to check and fix. Now on our setup, after the sound has gone out of the mixer, it hits that little EQ box that's down just below the computer. If you don't know your way around EQ, please don't touch that. But what the EQ is doing is a much more sophisticated version of the EQ on the board. It splits out the sound into channels from low to high, and then gives you the ability to control the relative strengths of different parts of the sound spectrum. The next place the sound goes after the EQ is it goes out to the amplifiers. Now amplifiers do exactly what they sound like, they make sound louder. The amplifiers are very important because if the amps are on, then any sound that's generated at any point in the chain gets sent through them. This is why we always turn the amps on after everything else, so that we don't get a pop through the system. Say if we turn on the mixing board while the amps are on, that power surge is gonna, and depending on how bad it is, can do damage to your speakers. So don't do that. One of my colleagues when I did AV in college always remembered this, is the amp is like a judge in the courtroom. First to go out, last to come in. Everybody else gets in the courtroom, then the judge. Judge leaves, then everybody else. If that helps you remember, great. If it doesn't, great, you can forget it now. It goes from the amp, now that the signal is loud enough, it goes to the speaker. So the reason we need the amp, I guess I should say this, the reason we need the amp is because the actual volume of the actual strength of the signal coming from the source is relatively pretty weak. Think about, the amount of sound that a computer's speakers generate, or the actual volume of someone speaking into a microphone is fairly weak compared to the sound that we need to come out of the speakers, which is much louder. So that's what the amp is doing, is it's taking that signal and just boosting it. It comes out of the speakers, and then we have sound. At Comedy Sports, we have what's called a snake, which is a bunch of microphone ins that then run as one cord back to the mixer. This is the snake. You can see it's got a bunch of microphone inputs and a couple of outputs. The outputs are taking the sound from the board out of here and back to the amps. The inputs take the sound from the snake, run around in this one thick cable, a lot easier than running 16 separate cables, around the outside of the theater where they come into the back of the board. So another important aspect of the booth is the power control. We've got this unit down here. Right now you can see it's got the little red switch illuminated. This little red switch controls the power to the soundboard, to the equalizer, to the lights, and to the projector. So none of those things will work unless you turn this on. And you always want to remember you got to turn this on before you turn on the amp, so you're going to get a big pop through the speakers, which is no good. The computer is on its own power. You just turn that on the computer unit itself. But you can check at any point, if something's going wrong, is it the board channel? Is it the cord? Is it the microphone? Is it somewhere along the signal chain here that I've accidentally cut out the thing that I wanted? You can try and single that out. This video is not going to go into detail about troubleshooting, but now that you kind of have the idea of what is going on with the sound as it moves through the system, hopefully you have more of an idea of the potential failure points that you can check. We know that we're working in kind of a weird space, a space that we're maybe adapting to our needs more than it was maybe designed to fit our needs. So you also got to be aware that sometimes things are going to have changed since the last time you worked on them. Somebody else is going to have used the equipment. Equipment's going to have broken. We're going to have rearranged the channels on the board for whatever reason. So a couple of things. One of them, it's always really important to check before shows. If you can, before the audience has gotten in, making sure that your mic works, that these mics work, that the projector is working, and that you have all of the things on the computer that you need. We're also a little delicate on the electricity situation. We've found that if the lights are on and the printer in the booth runs, that can trip the circuit breaker. That's a lot of information, especially if you haven't done very much with sound before. Don't worry about it. I know as much as I know from having hands-on experience over a long period of time. The more you work with this stuff, the more it's just going to start making sense, get into your bones, and really be something that you can play and have a lot of fun with. The most important thing is always just have that curiosity and sense of play that makes you want to figure out what's going on and make it happen better. Do it.